What up? We are live. This is your man Abuamerican here with a all-star cast. You know, you watch those all-star movies. This is the all-star cast, the greatest minds in this corner of the internet. I'd like to welcome, of course, Mehdi's a regular on my channel. Rolo, welcome, good sir. Long time no see.
Yeah.
And even Rich and I, we've been live also. So hello once again. Welcome again once again, good sir. We're missing a couple of panel members, but they'll be back or they'll be in. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, talking about, you know, the gynocentric West and its influence on Islam and Islam's influence on the West, because we're seeing some of both happening right now. So yeah,
for sure. I want to thank you for helping me out with my fourth book too, Craig, because that was your influence and is definitely evident in parts of the book. So in fact, I think I put you in the acknowledgments. Yeah, you're in the back of the book too. Well,
I was kind of like shocked. I was like, wow, what I'm in the book.
Hey, help me out, man. I gotta kind of, put credit where it's due. I also had Rabbi Kaba from, he was my Jewish influence for that too. So he was on there as well.
Nice. There he is, the man Daniel. This is everybody knows Daniel, at least on the Muslim side of the game. I don't know if you guys have met Daniel, Rich and Rolo, but Daniel has been like on the Muslim fighting feminism side of the game since I can remember, back when I was only on Facebook and nothing else. This guy's been in the trenches since day one. He's the one who came up with the term feminism is the gateway drug to disbelief.
Yeah, hi, welcome. How are you guys doing?
Good. I've seen you make the rounds. I know who you are.
I'm new.
Yeah, very nice to meet you.
Well, only one that's missing is Coach Kareem. He'll be back here in a minute. He's doing some tech things. Some content, $4.99 super chat. Thank you. Hello to you too, good sir. So, what actually inspired this was a clip where you and Rich had a guest on, and I'll play it here in a second. And you guys were actually talking about. Well, let's just go ahead and play it here. Let me see. Oh, guys, let me know if my sound is
Was that from? Oh, okay. So that was from the one we did on religion and marriage. That's it. Yeah.
Well, first off, Rich and Roy, both you guys changed my life.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yes. In any case, I wanted to comment that I think Islam is probably going to be resistant to feminization. And the
reason I'm surprised.
Yeah. It'll be the last holdout. It'll definitely be the last holdout. Yeah.
Well, it's essentially my thinking on this is that the Quran and the Hadith and the Sirah are declared to be perfect and unchangeable, and that Muhammad was the guy to be emulated in all aspects. So any changes to it, then they brand you as an apostate. And if you're a Catholic, you might get excommunicated, but if you're an apostate in Islam, well, the consequences are a little more severe.
I'll tell you what the problem is with that is that boys want girls.
Yep.
And boys will do whatever it takes to get girls, and girls are susceptible to these narratives, right? I've already talked to a lot of dudes. There's a guy, I think he goes by. That was Kareem. I screwed that up. On my show a couple of times. I think you've. Oh, you're muted, Greg. You're muted, but
my mic. Yeah, I get echo. Do you guys know if this gentleman here is Muslim or not? He's very, very.
I think he was in the military, so he might have been stationed somewhere in the Middle East, which is probably why he had the exposure.
Okay, yeah, because he's hip to a lot of Islamic lingo like Sirah. This is very specific language, so that he would know this is, and not be Muslim. This is pretty impressive, actually. I'm quite surprised. But going into this right here, when we're talking about the entire gynocentric thing, and actually, you know what? Let me let Mehdi, because Mehdi is the pro at this, whole hosting type of things. Mehdi, take the lead here for me.
I mean, firstly and foremost, it's a pleasure to share the platform with both Rolo and Rich. Thank you for joining us today.
Sure.
Actually, Rolo, it's funny. I was one of the whiny bitches in your comments who would say, your streams are too long. Can you make shorter videos? And then you started making shorter videos. I would watch the shorter videos, and they were the gateway drugs to me watching the long streams. Now I only watch the long streams. And there's two in particular, actually, that I would definitely recommend the audience to check out, which were very eye-opening. One of them was Ovarian Shift. The other one was
ovulatory shift. I hope your ovaries are shifting.
My bad. Ovulatory Shift, and what was the name of the other one? I believe it was titled War Brides or something along those lines. They were fascinating. It was fascinating to say the least. I don't want to spoil it for everyone else. Rich, you were the first content creator that I actually came across in this sphere to begin with. And your videos were shorter. My attention span was a lot shorter back then. And it was actually to do with the data pertaining to women who have had, the more body, the higher her body count, the less likely she is to pair bond and so on. So, I wanted to thank both of you for the work that you guys are doing, because a lot of the Muslims in this space, I don't know what it is, but they find it a bit problematic when they hear non-Muslims talking about this type of thing or these types of discussions, almost as though Muslims have a monopoly on general knowledge, which is not true, and there's a lot of beneficial general knowledge that I have taken from your content. Now, of course, we are Muslims, and there are certain things we will not be able to take, for example, sleeping indiscriminately with women and so on and so forth. But putting that to the side, there's a lot of objective truths which I find to be very enlightening and educational. So I wanted to thank you both for the work that you have both been doing over the years, for that matter.
Absolutely.
Moving it forward from there, I mean, what did you want to comment on this video, Abuamerican, exactly?
Well, first off, I wanted to get Rich and Rolo's perspective on Islam, gynocentrism, feminism, the influence. Where do you guys see things going? And then especially like with Daniel, he is by far, and that's no insult to anybody on the panel, but by far amongst us and the Muslims, he's the most intellectually, just sharp-minded guy out there who's been in the trenches on the longest on this. I want to get his take and then, throw our takes in there on top of this and see if we come to some sort of, consensus about, how we view, the world that we have somehow inherited as men. So, Rich, Roll, I don't know who wants to go first. Where do you see?
I'll start, since I'm kind of the gateway to showing you the rabbit hole, and then Rolda will take you right down that thing and show you everything.
I'm the fire hose.
I like, it's a cancer and it's spreading, and I see Islam and Muslim countries as probably the last stronghold, the most resistant to it. Which is nice to see that there's at least some places in the world that are, taking a stand. Because I don't encourage guys to take a stand in the West anymore. Like I've just gotten to the point where I'm just like, enjoy the decline, take care of yourself, draw a perimeter around yourself and the people that you love, and then control what you can control. Let the rest of them burn it down. I don't see there as an opportunity now in the West to try to turn things around. There's no religion that's got it right. I haven't seen any, religions in Western parts of the world, Christians, Jews, whoever, even Muslims, when they come here, they tend to, start dealing with a lot of the problems that everybody else is dealing with here in the West. So it's probably the last stronghold. And where is it going to go from there? I don't know. We'll see. If I, people ask me, because I generally say, if somebody says, well, what religion do you associate with? I just say, like, I'm generally non-religious, but if I had to pick one, I'd have to go with Islam because it seems to get most of the stuff right.
Rollo?
Well, I'll just begin by saying this is I spent, as you know, Craig, because you helped me do this, the last 3 years anyways, doing research on religion and the red pill. That's why I titled the last book was Religion. And it grew out of my association with a blogger by the name of Dalrock, who was a Christian blogger. And he had a lot of Protestants as well as Catholics that had an ongoing conversation for about 10 years on that blog in his forum chats and commentary. And so a lot of my sort of interest in how the religion intermeshes with red pill praxeology, for lack of a better term. It grew out of that, and then as soon as I said that I was going to be doing a book on red pill and religion, then I think it was actually you, Craig, who hit me up and said, "Hey, are you gonna have a section on Islam?" I'm like, oh, okay, I better put that in the notes, right? And then I had Rabbi Kaba come on and say, "You're going to do something about Judaism." Oh, okay. And so it was sort of building over that. So I have to sort of give you a little bit of background here before I comment on Islam in particulars, because I have, one of the things that 3 years of research taught me is that feminism, gynocentrism, feminine primary thinking, feminine correct society, the feminine imperative, which is what I've called it since day one, has been assimilating male spaces for a very long time. Religion is definitely one of those, as well as politics, as well as the workplace, as well as the intersexual dynamics. Everything else is prioritized for women. Religion is not immune from that. And so when I'm going and I'm looking at each individual religion, it's real easy to pick on Christianity because Christianity was the first to fall. Okay. It's very emotional. It's very, it meets women's needs first and foremost. When I was in the interview with Rich that you just played a minute ago, the reason why I said that Islam will be the last to it's like the last stronghold, the last bastion, is because it's very patriarchal. It's of the three primary Abrahamic religions, Islam is still like the last bastion of patriarchy. And men are still looked up to as sort of like the head of household, right? They're still looked up to, in at least in a general sense. However, as I'm going and I'm doing this research, it's like I said, it's easy to pick on Christianity because you can just see how endemic the feminine imperative has been in assimilating that religion. Judaism as well. Judaism was already matrilinear to begin with, so that's real easy to look into. Any of the Eastern religions all pander to feminist and feminine, like Western feminism right now. I looked at Krishnaism, for example. Tulsi Gabbard, for example, is a Krishna. I don't even know what to call it, Krishna. For Western women right now, Krishnaism, whatever, I don't even know what to call it, but that's very popular. It's starting to become more and more popular in the West as a result of the fact that we have essentially given up religion for a new religion, which is what I've termed the sort of worldwide religion.
Emotionalism?
Based on emotionalism, exactly. And so it's an emotional appeal. Anything that works for the feminine gets assimilated so that it becomes, as I said in the book, Christian kosher. Islam will become Islamic kosher at some point, Judaism, Hinduism, whatever it is. So we have this sort of what I've called the syncretic world religion, meaning we take all of these religions, we just mix them all together and we call it love. And it doesn't matter if you worship, in a mosque or in a church or a temple or wherever it is that you are. It doesn't make any difference. It's very Unitarian, and it's very, it's supposed to be all inclusive. And the only thing that we all have to agree upon is that, we're all focusing on our emotions and our connection, and we're not judgmental of each other. And I would argue that in its infancy anyways, like Christianity, certainly Catholicism for a while, Islam for sure, Judaism was very patrilinear, patrilocal anyways, in that there was a patriarch that was the man who was sort of deciding and had the authority. And as we have removed authority from men socially, we have removed that authority also from those religions and put women into those positions of authority. And while Islam may be the last bastion or the last holdout amongst all of the world's religions, we're seeing it sort of incrementally, just like little by little. Just depends on show me the country, show me the more Western or the more affordable gynocentrism is to that particular country, the more you will see the erosion of that particular religion. It could be anything. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, but that was the point I was trying to make to the gentleman that was on Rich's show, is that, but we have to think strategically here. In 1 or 2 more generations, what's it going to look like? Is it going to be stronger? Is it going to be weaker as a result of gynocentrism?
Mm-hmm. Very well thought out.
So I would have a question for Rolo. Do you distinguish between Muslims and Muslim countries, Muslim societies becoming more gynocentric, adopting these feminist ideals, versus the religion itself becoming gynocentric? Because I think Muslims, the main issue that a Muslim would have, like with what you just described, they would completely agree. Like I would completely agree with you that Muslim societies, unfortunately, are going down this path of adopting feminism, secularism, liberalism, becoming more godless. Actually, this is happening in Muslims in the West and also Muslim countries overall. But we would have a issue with saying that the religion itself is becoming, because we have like this standard of our religion, and that might have been what the gentleman in your in that broadcast was mentioning, that there's hadith, there's the Quran itself, and our understanding is, and what we believe is, that the Quran is the word of God, right? So when there is a verse in the Quran that says that al-rijalu qawwamuna ala nisa, which means that men are authorities and maintainers over women, it's really hard for like one of these feminized or feminist or simp whatever Muslim guys coming and saying, oh well, God wants equality between men and women, because there it is in black and white. This is God himself saying that men are authorities over women, and endorsing this kind of patriarchal system. So it'd be hard to and these reformers actually that have bought into gynocentrism, feminism, they have a really difficult time making much headway into the Muslim community, because there's actually an example of one. Her name is Amina Wadud, and she did this media spectacle where she tried to lead men in prayer, and she's an academic actually. She has this book.
I know the name. Yeah.
You know about her? So she's in her book, she addresses this verse of the Quran, and she says, we as Muslims should be okay with saying no to the Quran, like basically saying no to God.
Right.
And so that's where immediately, like people all over, Muslims all over, denounced her for that and said, you're no longer Muslim. You've been taken out of Islam by your statement because you're saying no to God. So she has no actual foothold in the community. She's not invited to speak at mosques. So that being said, like I think the nuance that you had in your statement, Rolo, is that it's something gradual, and Islam is the last holdout. And so I agree with you that, and this is actually part of our eschatology in Islam, because there are statements of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, where he says that there will come a time where women are dominant, where women are going to take over.
In the Old Testament as well. Yeah. Yes.
So this is something that we completely agree with, because it's part of our eschatology, our end time prophecy, that women are going to be dominant and they're going to control our affairs. And that's what we're seeing. Like, look at the biggest Muslim leaders, quote unquote, in the West. We have people like Ilhan Omar. We have people like Rashida Tlaib. Like, these are supposedly our leaders. But this is a disaster, because they're so willing to throw Islam under the bus for the sake of this kind of progressive, liberal, feminist nonsense that they're constantly preaching. So that's the only distinction, or the only point I would make in response to what you guys are saying, is that yes, the Muslim community unfortunately is going down that path. We are the last holdout, because it's very difficult for progressives to kind of tamper with or reinterpret the Quran, because we have, like, it's much better preserved historically as an objective historical point of Western scholarship. Like, the Quran has been preserved from even using carbon dating, like the actual Mus'haf or the codex of the Quran has been dated to within the Prophet's lifetime. The extant codices that we have in museums all over the world. So it's clear that it has been preserved for all this time. It's hard for, unlike with other religions, for some reformer to come along and say, no, this is just something made up. Like this verse about patriarchy, this verse about the authority of men. This is just something that some guy 200 years after the origin or the beginning of the religion, this is something that was just added on later. It's much more difficult for Muslim reformers to make that kind of argument, just because of these historical facts about Islamic textual preservation.
Well, let me tag something on to the end of that there, because this was actually a particular part of my third or my fourth book, Religion, that I talked about is I can't argue with God. Okay, when you have a true believer, when you have somebody who is sincere, I don't care what religion, is sincerely invested in their faith. No matter what I say, no matter what data I point out, whether I say, look, here's what's happening to your religion right now. Here's what I see as a lay person. Like I am not a Muslim. I'm not really much of anything right now, but I mean, I have my faith, I have my beliefs, but when I look at these things from an objective sort of like, seeing the forest for the trees kind of thing, I see what's happening. And the problem with that is that when you have somebody who has a sincere investment in that faith, it's like saying, well, look at what's going on here. Look what's going on here. And it's not just with Islam. When I make the point that there are was it Presbyterian ministers, female ministers, talking about they want to melt down. I forget the names. What's her name? I'm trying to remember the pastoress, but she was in, I believe she's either Methodist or she's Presbyterian, but she melted down all these purity rings from these girls to turn it into one big statue of a big, basically a big cooter, right? I mean, a vagina statue that she presented to Gloria Steinem in the church. And it's like, where did this go? And when I go and I look at like leaders like, Beth Moore or the rest of these, the evangelical leaders, where I look at the influx of women missionaries in Catholicism, and you look at like the Pope sort of having this very soft line to what we would call wokeism right now. And I look at that and you see it incrementally. If I say that and I point that out to an Orthodox believer, they go, well, that's not the real religion. That it's the no true Scotsman logical fallacy. It's like, well, that's just not the real thing. That's just not she's not a real Muslim. She's not a real Jew. She's not a real Christian because she did these things or she said these things. And the problem that I run into all the time is that it's not about the actual faith itself. It's about the erosion of that faith, because those religions are still practiced and believed in by people, by men and by women. And at this stage in our sort of evolutionary Western whatever culture, when we talk about gynocentrism, what we're looking at is this influence or this sort of debate, what Dalrock has called a debasing of that faith, meaning like you have something like a quarter. That's where the term debasing came from. It's like there used to be in Roman culture and Latin, there's the coin or whatever, and what people would do is they would shave little bits of it off so they could melt it down into smaller quarters so that they could use those and just sort of etch away at it until the actual original coin was completely debased and it didn't have the same value that it did before. That's where we get that term from, and that's really what happens when we debase religion. Is we have this one belief that we all, the orthodoxy says this is the way it is, this is how we practice it, this is how we worship, this is the God that we worship. And then little by little, over the course of generations, that religion and that faith and that belief becomes something else. And that's how you get sects, and that's how you get different branches or different franchises of a particular religion. The point that I'm making in my fourth book is that the new religion, the worldwide global religion of emotionalism and gynocentrism, is a debasing of those particularly historically patriarchal religions right now. It's not about the actual faith or the merits of that particular faith. It's how is that faith being modified? How is that faith becoming debased? That's what I'm getting at right there. So I made the point in the introduction of the book. I said, you know what? I feel bad for people who have this sincere conviction when it comes to their faith, because they're clinging to this faith that is being eroded from the outside. So it's what we believed in our religion 2 generations ago is not what we believe in right now, as a result of saying, well, maybe this is okay. Maybe this practice would be better. Hey, we need to get with the times. Part of that getting with the times is exactly what you just said. We have women coming in and they reinterpret the Quran, they reinterpret the Hadith, they reinterpret the Bible, and they say, well, the same situation. I want to say it's in Corinthians, but it's I do not allow a woman to teach. Right. That's, and men love your wives. Women respect your husbands. Men have authority over the husband. What happens is when the primary believers, when the people who are invested in that religion say, you know what? Is that really what it says? Because the Times say, well, maybe this is what they were thinking back in the Old Testament days, or maybe this is what they were thinking back in, in ancient Islam. But now we have to update this, and now we have to make it more hip, and we have to make it more cool, and we have to make it more kosher with what's really going on. We need men and women to be more equal. So let's reinterpret that and say, this is what the real faith is. When that happens 1, 2, 3 generations at a time, then the faith becomes something different. So it's no longer what it was. It's now what we're saying it is. And when you get into the 4th and 5th generation after that, they don't know any different. They don't know what the old religion was versus the new religion is right now, because that's all they've ever known, and that's all their grandparents have ever known as well. So that's what I'm saying. It goes from sort of like this secular interests to let's see if we can make this part of the religion. And what happens is you go from secular interests to doctrine, like how do we practice the religion, to how do we rewrite the faith so it gels with the doctrine and then with whatever that influence was. The main influence right now is feminism and gynocentrism. It affects the doctrine. We're already seeing that. We're already seeing attempts at that. That's how you get statues of, melted down purity rings of a woman's vagina, right? And then we go, how can we reinterpret the Bible? How can we reinterpret the Quran? How can we reinterpret the Torah, whatever, so that this is okay? And then after 2, 3, 4 generations, that becomes the authentic, orthodox, genuine faith. That's what I'm getting at right there, is that that's why I said Islam will be the last to fall, but that women are trying to make that, gynocentrism is trying to make that inroad so that it can assimilate that into this mishmash of this syncretic world religion that will eventually come up.
Yeah, let me jump on here.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I want to welcome Rollo. It's nice to meet you, be with you, and Brother Daniel for the first time. The essential difference between Islam and the rest of religions is the script. The script is so solid, and it's memorized 100% by tens of millions of people among the whole planet. And by the way, we are facing that in Islam in the last 600 to 800 years. People try to reinterpret, to give new explanation, to give to just deviate and to accumulate Islam with the modern day problems, or modern day way of thinking. So it's happening since hundreds of years, but it never works out, because we have that. I'm from Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
And we're having that, and we call them the liberal Muslims. Actually, we are categorizing these type of people, and we can find them out with the first 5 minutes when they speak, when they start about equality, liberty, freedom. We will catch them. So why we can catch them? Because the script is so solid. The script really is so solid. If you change even a vowel, one letter in Quran or Hadith, they will catch you immediately. Like in a conference 2 days ago about the family, it's against feminism, was in Jordan 3 days ago. I was talking, and I quoted one verse of Quran. I did one single mistake. They stopped me on the stage. You did mistake. People know that, and they can catch any deviation of the solid script or the explanation in Islam within a second. So it is so difficult for people to change those things and to be adapted generation after generation to be a new modified religion. You got me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I have a question for Rollo, actually, and maybe Rich can also give his view. But do you think that religion can exist outside of the minds and the opinions of believers of that religion? Is that possible? Is there this? I feel like this is a Platonism versus nominalism debate. Is it, because some people will say no, there's no such thing as this idea, like this ideal religion in the abstract. The religion is only what actual believers think. Is that your view?
Well, I actually talk about that at the end of my book, which is like, is the religion dependent on believers? Is the religion dependent, like what we know of? And I hate to get all stupidly existential here, but like if the human race ended tomorrow, if every man, woman, and child on planet Earth died tomorrow, and there was no one to say, oh, there's a God or there's not a God, would there still be a God? Right. And that's one of those sort of existential things, is like, do we create God or does God create us, kind of thing. And what I would argue that most Orthodox believers would say is, yes, of course, before there was human beings, there was God, and after human beings are gone, there'll be God too, right? But as far as us being human animals crawling around on planet Earth with, oxygen and gravity and all the things that define our existence, what's important to us right now? Because really, we have to, as human beings, we kind of have to be a little bit self-centered. We have to, it's our existence, it's our consciousness, and like I said, I didn't want to get too existential here, but that's the real question: is does that exist? Does whatever God is to you exist outside of your, outside of human existence? Right. And that's, again, you're talking, Platonism at that point. It's kind of like, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make any sound? Nobody's there to hear it. Does it make any sound? Well, scientifically speaking, yeah, of course it would, because these are the rules, but nobody's there to experience it. So did it really happen or did it not really happen? Well, what's important to you and what's not important to you is really what you're getting down to. I hate when I see these motivational posters that show, like, the big galaxy, right? And there's this little dot or this little arrow pointing at this one little random dot on the star field or whatever. And it's like, you are here and this is how insignificant you really are. And don't sweat the small stuff. And it's all small stuff. It's supposed to make you feel better about your insignificance, or your problems really aren't that important, kind of thing. And it's like, no, God damn it, they are. They are very important, because this is where I am. These are the few years that I get to live. These are the few years that I'm conscious and I'm able to contemplate and think and do and create and do all these things. So I don't care if we're this little dust speck in the middle of the universe. It's what's going on right here, right now, and what can I do with that? So as a result, what is my relationship with an eternal, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipowerful God? This is like not a question of religion per se, as it is sort of like this understanding of what is physical and what is metaphysical.
I was just sitting here sort of thinking about the question, because as a guy that's non-religious, it's odd. It's like the chicken or the egg sort of question, right? Like, what comes first?
Rich, you just need to take some magic mushrooms, then you'll have a religious experience.
Oh, I've done that before. That doesn't bring me to religion. That brings me to a different place. It's a good question. Like, what comes first? The chicken or the egg? If people were wiped off the earth, would there still be a religion? I think that it requires believers. I think that the reason why humans are so successful as a species, the reason why sapiens grew and spread around the world the way they did is because of gossip, because they all agree on. The only reason why a $20 bill is worth $20, it's a piece of paper. It's because everybody agrees that it's a $20 bill. It's worth $20, right? Mm-hmm. When people agree on religious values, then it exists, in those sectors. I was actually curious, while Rollo was talking, I was just looking up, the most popular religions. Christianity's number one, Islam's number two. Christianity fell. They're obviously taking jabs at Islam now, the way that Coach Kareem was explaining it and a few others, but I'm more of a spectator and a student on this cast, if I'm being honest.
Well, what if someone, oh, sorry.
Okay. No,
what
go ahead.
if someone took the rational male, for example, let's say in 100 years, in 200 years, and they are reading the rational male and they completely misinterpret it, right? And they are reading your words and they say, oh, actually, this is completely in support of, what they might not use the word gynocentrism or feminism, but they're putting forward these kinds of interpretations of your work, interpretations that you would completely disagree with.
Yes.
You wouldn't be around to correct them.
Debasing my work, yes.
Yeah, they're debasing your
Continue.
work. But you would say that they're debasing it, right? You have there are ideas that exist beyond your mind, right? And or our minds, and when we're all gone and other people have come in the future and they're debasing it, then that is a corruption of a ideal or those ideas that you had. I think you'd agree with that, right?
I would agree with that. I would also say that ideas are one thing. Really, what I'm doing is I keep calling it a praxeology all the time, because I think a lot of people want to turn my book or the red pill or what we know, red pill awareness, what we know about intersexual dynamics, into some sort of system of belief. And I think that that's a mistake. I think we need to stay as rational and as objective and as praxeological as we can about things. However, I will say this, is that I do say that when I'm talking and I'm discussing ideas and I'm connecting dots, then we kind of shift over into what Rich just said, which is really memetics, which is what's the meme, what's the common belief. That's where our values and our religions and our ideas about what are our best practices come from. As Rich was saying, $20 is $20 in the US because everybody says, yeah, it's $20, right? Well, that's a meme. It's like, okay, that's worth about, I can buy X amount of things with this particular dollar bill or this denomination of money, right? Well, it's the value that we place on it. And it's that everyone is agreeing to it because everybody else has the common meme, $20 is $20. So when you take that and we start talking about family values, when we start talking about our common beliefs in religion, our tribal beliefs in ourselves, the color of our skin, where we came from, what our nationalities are, when we start mixing that in there, there are memes that are very, very beneficial to human beings. And then there are memes that are very, very can be some of the worst atrocities that you will ever experience in humankind. So that is something that actually memetics is something I've been getting into lately since I've been reading Steve Stuart Williams. But that's essentially what it boils down to. And you can use that. Memes evolve just like human beings evolve. So it's like the ideas that we have and we pass on to our kids that are best practices, those change with the times. So when those practices become like they're really good and they're very beneficial and we can successfully reproduce or get food or make money or live a better life as a result of them, we keep those and we turn those into values until such a time that those memes become something that is deleterious to our survival or our reproduction or whatever else. That's why when I talk about like how the sexual revolution came in the wake of an invention, which was hormonal birth control, a lot of our sort of old order thinking was challenged by that. And here we are in 2021, 21 years into the 21st century right now. And we're still thinking in terms of old order thinking, but we're living in a new order world where we have more access to data and we can see, like, we would not be having this discussion just 10 years ago. We would not be having the same discussion 20 years ago because we wouldn't have the ability to do so. We would have to have our fingers on the pulse and be specialists in how feminism is sort of assimilating religions. Now we can see it every day. Now there's Twitter feeds for, corrupt pastors and, and here's this girl on Instagram who is taking off her hijab and she's in Iran and she's challenging the system and going by dancing in the streets or something without a hijab on. And now she's, risking her life. And now on a worldwide stage, we say, yes, go girl. That's good for you. That's the way it ought to be. Challenge the system. Oh boy, she's courageous and brave to be doing that in that particular country, with those particular values and those particular memes being popular. Then you can go and you look at a country like, what is it? Craig, is it? I think it's Somalia, who is was a traditionally Islamic country, now is a feminist government.
Yeah, Somalia has actually, I don't want to pick on Somalia.
It's Mogadishu. I know it's one of those kind of. Is Ethiopia? Maybe it was Ethiopia.
I'm not really sure about the government of Somalia, but I don't want to pick on the Somalis because I have a pretty tumultuous relationship with those guys. But they do tend to, in a sense, not as in a dysfunctional way, but they tend to reflect African American culture and society similarly. That they are a highly matriarchal society and culture.
Mm-hmm.
Can I jump in here? I got guys. I don't know what happened to my thing. My computer crashed and whatever else. I want to jump in. I want to bring in Rich and Mahdi because these two guys are like in similar fields, and so I want to kind of change the direction of the conversation. I missed the point where I wanted to drag in Coach Kareem. He started talking already. Mm-hmm. So when it comes down to you, Rich, and you, Mahdi, both of you guys are dealing with men, like predominantly male crowds. Obviously, we all are, but in a special way, you guys seem to like have more of a more like a personal contact slash like touch with your communities. You guys are really admirable in the way you guys address your communities. Rich, have you seen on your channels and on your platforms Muslim men, and what has been your opinion of how they've been responding to this? Because actually, whether we like to, and this is something that I have a problem with a lot of Muslim men, is that they tend to not seem to want to take on the burden of male performance. And that's a big thing that you're on, Rich. It's like, chase excellence. Don't chase women. Don't chase drama. Don't chase this. Chase excellence. And a lot of Muslims, for some reason, Muslim men, they have a problem with this because somehow they automatically think this chasing excellence somehow excludes us being able to also chase Islamic excellence, because this is always the default. When you say, do this or do that, they automatically say, oh, you're telling us to leave the religion of Islam, which obviously this is just, it's foolish. But you and Mehdi are both in that field. And so Mehdi is dealing with a lot of younger guys because he's a younger guy himself. Rich, you're dealing with men in general. Have you seen, what has been your opinion of Muslim men that you have dealt with and you've come across? So I'd like to hear Rich and Mehdi on this one, because you guys are really deep in this area.
Well, as far as, the guys that call into my show. So for those of you that are watching that don't know this, I do a Monday night show. It's now called the Unplugged Alpha. It's on at 8 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. And I usually have time for a call-in segment. There's usually a good 45 minutes to an hour for a call-in segment. Guys that call in are calling in because they have problems in their lives, right? They're not calling in because everything's perfect. So these guys are not legends of, their own world to begin with. They've got, they made some bad choices and they're getting some crap results. So I got to chop it up with them and sort of, find out what's going wrong. Like simping is not unique to culture or religion. It's unique to men. And I think that men in general, when they don't get good results with women, because getting good results with women is hard, or harder than what I think most men think it should be today. They think that if you're just yourself, you do the right thing, you put on some clothes and you brush your teeth, that, girls are going to like you and, want to marry you and be with you, sort of thing, and have your babies. And that's not true. So simping is not unique to anyone or any culture or skin color or anything like that in particular. There's a lot of Muslim guys that come in that simp, for sure, and they make themselves less so women can, become more, and they worship women, and they adopt a lot of feminist type of values. And my approach is the same with everybody. It's like, why? Like, where did you learn this? Like, where did this mindset come from, first of all? And it needs to stop.
Mehdi.
Yeah. Look, we live in a day and age today now where women genuinely, particularly in the developed world, don't need men. She needs men as a collective, but she doesn't need any one man. Okay. Now that puts women in this unique position whereby, I spoke about this on my podcast with Daniel Haqiqatu. In marketing, whenever you market a product, you are told and taught, never market people what they need, market them what they want. Because people don't buy what they need by and large. They buy what they want. Outside of rice, water, and potatoes, people are buying what they want, not what they need. Now, and I'm sure you guys would agree with me, but I'll make this statement. You tell me what you think. Men want women. Men don't necessarily need women. We need women to perpetuate the species, but our survival to reach the end of our natural lives is not dependent upon a woman. Women, on the other hand, need men to reach the end of their natural lifetimes. And for those who disagree with me, look outside your window. And I picked this up from the Book of Numbers. I forget the name of the author. The name
Aaron
of the author.
Clary.
Aaron Clary, right. Look outside the window. Have a look at the street. Have a look at the lamppost. Have a look at the shops. Name one of those things, the guttering, the sewage. Name one of those things that were built and are maintained by women. Now, so we can agree that a woman's survival is dependent upon men as a collective. However, the problem here is that men want women more than women need men. And this, because we live in a day and age where a woman in the developed world can genuinely not get married, not be in a relationship, not have a boyfriend, whatever the case may be, and her life is not actually in danger. She could technically live to the end of her life without ever marrying a man or taking a boyfriend. Okay? Which means what? Because women are less desirous of men, in my experience, than men are of women, and wants are a greater motivator of action than needs. And I take this quote from the 48 Laws of Power. I forget who said it now. But he who was willing to commit suicide has the initiative. In this instance, marriage suicide or relationship suicide. And women would rather die alone in the developed world than settled in her mind. So now, going back to the initial point, men are more desirous of women than women are of men because we have so much more testosterone that, you know, we need to let it out. Okay. Now we are pushed into a situation where men in general, unless he's the top 10% man, and even that's not enough, frankly speaking, these days, you need to have your game on point as well. Unless you're that guy, you are going to be more prone to simping or breaking the rules because women are happy to commit marriage suicide. He who is willing to commit suicide or relationship suicide has the initiative. That's my take on it.
You know, I guess what I'm looking for in terms of an answer, maybe I should be a little bit more specific. What I'm seeing is when I talk to Muslims online, there's always this great anger. Muslims don't need red pill. Red pill is anti-Islam. This, that, the other. And guys are carrying on and on and on and on and on about how we don't need red pill. And, you know, if that's what you want to say, that's what your choice, fine, knock yourself out. Say what you want to say, believe what you want to believe. I'm not here policing men and their behaviors and what you want to believe, what you don't want to believe, unless like you say. Anyway, the point is, what I'm not seeing is an organic embrace of masculinity that is in Islam. We find this in Islam. This is, I mean, when you look at the seerah, when you look at the history of Islam and the Muslims, you don't get more masculine than these guys. But what I'm seeing is Muslim men embracing all of the femininity and none of the masculinity. And so I'm trying to find out, like, what is your take on it? Because this is what I'm seeing. And maybe I'm being sort of black-pilled about our brothers here, but this is what I'm seeing, because now we have a situation where they talk about the Sahaba, Rich and Rolo. These are the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And these guys were absolute, just the most masculine men you would come across. And the only narrations they mention when they talk about these guys is how they're soft and how they're commanded to be soft and gentle with their wives, and how they're, you know, told to help their wives in the house. And they fail to realize and accept or see that these are men who in the morning would go out, and there are narrations of this, cut other men open with a sword, literally butcher him. They would go to battle from morning to evening, come back, cut open. Some of the companions were described as having wounds so deep the hands of their children could fit inside of the wounds. These men were like the most masculine, most combative type ready guys in the world. So a man being strong from a position of power, or being soft and gentle from a position of power, that's something unique. But where are these men of power today? You're just soft, putting softness on top of softness. And so I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but this is what I'm seeing. And this is why I tell my guys, go to combat sports, because you're just weak. You're Ted in accounting, or you're Ahmed in accounting. You know, you don't have a single callus on your hand. Then you come home and you want to wash dishes, and you want to be seen as some sort of champion. You know, come on, guy.
Yeah, let me add for this. I believe like there is fundamental differences between on which spot of the world that you're talking about. So when we're going to talk about the West, generally speaking, from socioeconomic point of view, and we rank like the countries, there is a huge difference between, for example, the Scandinavian countries and the Middle Eastern, like African countries, because the basic needs for individuals in such country is not fulfilled yet. such as United States, Sweden, Canada, Australia. Like, you know that Ibn Khaldun, Ibn Khaldun quote from the sociology, when hard time produce hard man, hard mind, hard man soften produce luxurious time produce weak man, and weak man fuck everything up. So
I'm not sure that's how it goes, but yeah, okay.
yeah.
I like
So
that ending. Fuck everything.
so yeah. So when you reach the peak of modernity and luxurious time, with very comfortable, with all of your physiological basic need fulfilled from the time you got born. So the basic desires of female is really fulfilled, like even in the more socialist countries such as Canada, where you live, Cooper. uh, they don't really need man, because the state will provide them with everything. Like, they do not have that desire. But in Africa, if she do not have a man after 20, if she lost her father, she will be in a very high dangerous risk. So it is totally different when we're talking about which country, which part of the world here we're talking about. So that's why the most egalitarian countries in the gender gap report, the last one in 2021, the gender gap report about in adolescence mental health and mental health and happiness, like the gap is going bigger and bigger in the most egalitarian country. The first one is in Sweden. The women in Sweden have the worst, the worst mental health and psychological problem. Why? She have all her desire fulfilled. She doesn't need a man. She will never formulate a family, and she will end up miserably. So we should take this under consideration, guys. Don't you think so?
Yeah, that's something I would agree with. I wanted to ask you, Craig, because I mean, you mentioned that a lot of Muslim guys have an issue with the red pill. What are the grievances that they raise?
Some of the grievances that they raise, in sense of the red pill, or just in general?
Yeah, well, just in general.
Just in general, I find that a lot of Muslim men, and I argue with a lot of Muslim men on all platforms. I think you guys seen that on Twitter in specific. What I see is it a cognitive dissonance, maybe, where guys want traditional women, but at the same time they don't want to accept traditional masculinity, and so I see a problem here. It's not that they don't want to accept traditional masculinity. I don't even know if it's that. I just think they're afraid to embrace it. I think that's more of the reality of the situation.
Why is that? Is it because it's too much work for them to take on that burden of performance, or they're scared?
I think it's fear. I think it's
fear.
fear. If you're going to be like my wife tying my shoes, to them, I look like an absolute savage. Oh, you're giving Muslims a bad name. You're the guy that makes people think Muslim women are oppressed. And so if he accepts his masculinity and his position as the husband in Islam, and in Islam, a man has not only responsibility, he also has authority over his wife, because she is obligated religiously to accept his command if it's not in matters of impermissible. If I said, and obviously I wouldn't, but if I said go stand in the corner and it's a permissible order, she can do it. She's supposed to do it. It's her obligation to listen to me. Now, obviously, you would be a savage if you told your wife to go stand in the corner for no particular reason, but it's her obligation to follow his command. And Muslim men are afraid to accept that command, that authority they've been given, out of fear of being castigated by the community. And as social media has become more and more widespread, especially amongst the women who wield it as a weapon and a bludgeon to clobber men over the head, brothers have become more and more fearful to actually exercise and execute the authority that they've been given over to women. And so when you come online and you say, hey, look, your wife's supposed to take care of the household because you told her to, then they come with all the narrations. Oh, it's not her obligation. Well, it's her obligation to obey you. And if you told her to go take care of the house, then problem solved, bro. But they don't want to hear this.
I will add to that. I will add to that as well, to answer your question, Rich. I see it in the comments right now. I've seen it just as we've been talking. We don't need red pill. We have Islam. And it's this conflation of the religion with general knowledge. And I have I don't know how many which ways to make this statement, and I say it till I'm blue in the face. Okay, it is from the Sunnah. The Sunnah is one of the practices that the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the companions used to practice to wrestle. They used to wrestle. Okay, can I become an Olympic gold medalist wrestler, world champion wrestler, by reading the Quran and Sunnah? No, I cannot. Is this a deficiency, a slight to the religion? No, it is not. But I need to seek that general knowledge in order to become a world champion wrestler, if that's what I want to do. And with red pill praxology, it's no different. We are talking about praxological things, human nature, how females behave in different situations. Of
A
course, Rolo,
set of tools.
set of tools. Thank you, Barakallahu Feek. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there will be some things that we cannot take. As I mentioned to both Rolo and Rich, we cannot sleep indiscriminately. The way that we partner with a woman is through marriage. And by the way, this word marriage has a different meaning to us than it would to you. So for you guys, that would be a civil contract with the state. For us, not necessarily so. Now, I understand there is common law relationships, and that could have implications depending on where you live. But fundamentally, a nikah for us is no different than what a girlfriend would be for you guys. You see? Anyway, putting those obvious things aside that we as Muslims cannot take, the set of tools provided that you could, that are within the red pill, that the likes of Rolo and Rich, have made so much content on, particularly yours, Rolo. I do like how you geek out on the details, I have to say. If I've found to be very useful and uniflipping-versal, period.
Yeah, that's what they are.
I'm
trying to say that they are tools. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, I was going to say that they are universal because this is human nature, right?
Mhm.
There is an objective human nature, and it doesn't matter, what religion you are. We're human beings, so there are certain things that are going to be natural just by virtue that they're human things. I also want to address Rich's question as well about why do we have these kinds of complaints coming from Muslim men. And I think Abuamerican touched on it, but we do have this kind of shame narrative that Muslim men mistreat women, and Islam is anti-women. Muslim men oppress women or hide women behind a veil, keep them from going out, stuff like this. All of these kinds of narratives came into the Muslim world through the colonial project. And it was a very deliberate kind of project to subjugate Islam to colonial powers. But that kind of colonial inferiority mindset has lasted many generations up until now. And I mean, it's nothing new, even within the White House during the Trump administration. There was a memo that actually leaked where the State Department was saying that the best way to really liberalize Muslims and get them on board with American interests is to go after this women's issue. Go after, we need to preach women's leadership. We need to push Muslim women to be, more active in traditionally masculine roles. We need to attack these kinds of traditional gender roles in order to basically break this kind of Muslim resistance to American foreign policy or American interests. So this is something that affects the Muslim psychology, unfortunately. And you find many Muslims today who will have this kind of knee-jerk reaction to red pill because, this is, making us look bad if we, this is making us look like misogynists if we agree that, for example, patriarchy is a good thing and gynocentrism is a bad thing. So that's, I think, a big hang-up that we're trying to, all of us on this panel in the Muslim community, we're trying to push back and trying to get, break the spell, basically, that many even Muslim leaders and imams have fallen under, many of them, unfortunately.
Can I add for that, if you don't mind, about American?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I believe there's two main reasons for these blue-pilled, young, miserable guys who's attacking the praxology, because that's. But those are minority. We're really making fun of them here in Arab world. Red pill awareness is booming. I established my website 2 months ago, and people is visiting it from 80 countries. So there's two main reasons. One of them is the West phobia, we have those mind who's living under the rock, or like the rock is inside. So they are afraid of everything west, everything coming from the west. No, we don't need this west. No, this haram, this blah 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 blah. And I don't believe in this, because we're studying a lot of sciences from the west. The west themselves after the mid ages was taking from our sciences without fear. Like in the middle ages, like we was in the head, we was leading in almost all sciences, than Europe. So they did not hesitate to take sciences and scientific books from our side, and they study it, they develop it. So it is not an excuse if anything comes from the West is bad. No, it is not, because when you get sick, you will run to the hospital with this Western knowledge to get to be treated. This is the first one. The second one is like what you mentioned, Rolo. Some of them are like so, I can say, weasel, so scared to take this amount of responsibility that we preach with red pill. But like really, when you got the red pill lens and look at the Sira, which is the historical like stories about the companions of Prophet Muhammad in the beginning of the first like 100, 200 year of Islam, and you look at it from wearing the red pill lens, you will find out, for example, Khalid bin Walid, he's one of the most famous military leader in our history. He got around 11 wives, tens of concubines, and with 40 kids. And when he died, he never got any single foot in his body without hit of spear or sword. So this is a great warrior, having like more than, I assume, more than 20 to 30 women in his life with 40 kids. So when we look about the rest of the companions, they are all super masculine figures. So we have this in our literature. So it is not a Western idea. We're just getting it from the West. That's it.
I have a question. So, again, I'm coming at this with curiosity. Do you think that maybe part of the reason why there's a lot of weak guys out there sort of simping for women in Islam is, does that have anything to do with the fact that a guy like Craig can have 4 wives, and then that limits 3 other women's availability to other men? So they figure if they soften their approach and they become more feminized, and that'll make women like them more, or does that even things out and make it more egalitarian?
Sneaky
I'm just curious.
strategy.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a sneaky
Fish
strategy, but to the point, there's a history of strong, masculine, virtuous, successful men in Islam that run harem. There was Ishmael the Bloodthirsty, who purportedly had over 1,000 children, right? That leaves a bunch of women unavailable for other men. I'm just wondering if you guys think that has anything to do with them softening their tone and not taking on the burden of responsibility, because to run a harem of 1,000 or several hundred women to have over 1,000 children is going to tie up a lot of resources. I'm just curious about that.
تفضل أخي.
No, actually, Daniel's been very quiet. I'd like to hear him. I'd like to hear him talk. He's been very quiet the whole show. I don't know. You have an opinion on this, Daniel, or?
Yeah, I don't think that. I think that polygamy actually, or polygyny, makes people more masculine in society, not less masculine. And this is actually a anthropological fact that they've studied, and Joseph Heinrich cites it in his book, The Weirdest People in the World. And he cites the fact that in societies that practice polygamy or polygyny, such as Muslim societies, testosterone levels are higher, and testosterone goes after marriage. So when a man marries a woman in the West and in monogamous societies, testosterone goes off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
It drops severely. But in polygynous societies, the overall baseline testosterone level is higher. And after marriage, the man's testosterone will generally stay the same or even go up after marriage. So there seems to be more testosterone in polygynous societies. That's what the research shows. I don't think that it's generally the case that people like Abuamerican are monopolizing women because they have more that they're marrying. Because generally in these masculine societies, there are fewer men than women, because men are in the dangerous jobs, men are going to battle, men are fighting. So in a true traditional masculine society, if men are being men as they should be, there's going to be fewer of them, and then there will be many women actually who will have to go without. So this is something that Islam accounts for, and polygyny as a practice has, for some reason, because of Christianity and church reforms that happened literally 1500 years ago, polygyny was outlawed by the Roman Catholic Church. But other societies, the majority of patriarchal societies, also happen to be polygynous. So I don't think the beta simphood that we find in the Muslim community can be attributed to polygyny per se.
I would argue this, and let me see if I can put a finer point on this. Hey, Craig, can you put up that what I'm sharing there? This is like this is one of two illustrations that I did not use for my fourth book. Now, you can replace Christ with Yahweh, with the Torah, with Allah, with just God. Okay, in this instance here. Okay, this is the biblical order of the family, or used to be, anyways. Now, this is pretty much defines masculine authority. There was God above the man, above the husband. What was the husband's underneath his umbrella? Was to protect the family, to lead the family, and to provide for the family. Those are technically the 3 P's of hypergamy, by the way, which is protection, provisioning, and parental investment. Below him, beneath him, under that umbrella was the wife. Comfort, teach, and nurture. Okay, both the husband as well as the children, and then of course the children were underneath that. Love the parents and obey the parents. If you go look at any Abrahamic religion, this is across the board. What in patriarchal societies, this is exactly what this was. Now that's number one. So what I did is I changed this up for modern times, and this is the new church. This is the church of emotionalism right here.
Oh, sorry.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's that. So this is not a religious problem. This is a societal problem. This is a gynocentric problem. This is the new church right here. So if you can put that one up there, Craig, put that second one that I just put in.
Oh, is it a change? Okay. Is this the second one?
So now this is the new order. Okay. The new order is God, whatever your higher metaphysical, beliefs are. Okay, beneath that is gynocentrism, is teaching that gynocentrism, and then of course feminism, the Duluth model of feminism, which means that men are always to blame. Beneath that is the wife. Now the wife has the duty to protect the family, to comfort, to lead the family, to nurture, to provide for the family. All of the things that men used to do. When we switch over from a feminine to a masculine context here, that woman has to now take over for that, because men cannot be trusted to protect the family, to provide for the family, because they're basically children themselves. In fact, they're worse than children. Beneath her is now children who are expected to love the mother, to share, to shield the mother from accountability, because they are basically little ideological human shields right now. So what's good for the child is always good for the mother, and their duty is to obey mama. Okay. Beneath all of this now is the husband, and all he has to do is assume responsibility without any authority and generate resources. This is the new order of the church right here. And I really wish I'm kicking myself for not having put this into the fourth book, but that's what I don't, and across the board, I don't care what country you come from, whether you're from Scandinavia or the Middle East or Asia or wherever it is. This is why what Rich is saying here is like, why is it that these guys seem to think that simping is the way to go? Well, the reason for this is because they have been taught this new order, that they should not ever expect authority. That's why I say Islam is the last holdout, because it still teaches men that they have authority that can be used to enforce the responsibility that patriarchy in a balanced, ideal state implies. So when we have patriarchy, that comes with a guy being the authority and the head of the household, right? but it's also he has a responsibility to his children. He has a responsibility to his wife or wives. He has all of that duty and that honor and that everything that comes along with that. But he also has the authority to affect that. When guys go, well, maybe it'd be easier if I just align myself with the gynocentric social order. Maybe I should become more like a woman. Maybe I should get in touch with my female side, get in touch with my emotions. Maybe I should express myself emotionally. Maybe I should buy into this idea that, you know, men are just sort of these stunted, imperfect versions of women, and that if we just worked on ourselves, we can become more like women, and that will solve my reproductive problem, which is I can't get laid, I can't have a family, I can't have babies unless I do these things. They have no concept of even asking for or trying to assume any kind of authority that particularly patriarchal religions already implied in the book, in the Quran, in the Torah, even in New Testament. All of that stuff still implies a patriarchal authority that is gone in an egalitarian, equalist, blank slate a new order religion that is based on female emotionalism. So that's why these guys get upset when we go, no. And that's why they get upset when the Quran says in black and white, just as Daniel was saying, it's right here, black and white. This is what it says. I can go and point out, here it is. In Corinthians, it says, men are, I do not allow a woman to teach. I do not allow a woman to have like her hair uncovered in the church. I mean, there's a lot of stipulations in both the Old and the New Testament, black and white. And so what these guys do is they go, well, if I don't go along to get along, then if I don't simp for women, then I'm not going to solve my reproductive problem. And I think it's probably a little bit more pronounced, as Rich was saying, in a polygynous religion and a polygynous society, because they think, those guys who are the beta males think that the key or the direction or their strategy and tactics to solve their reproductive problem is to align themselves with the feminine. And what is the feminine doing? Trying to reinterpret the black and white writings of your holy texts. That's why. This is where that last image that I showed you, that's pretty much emotionalism and the new order religion in a nutshell. Yeah, and that's why men need to come together. That's why, guys, it's absolutely not a religion thing. It's a guy thing. It's a masculine thing. It's a man's thing. And I don't care where you come from or what your religion is. It's you as a guy need to reassume authority. And if you don't, this is where we're headed.
Yeah. 2 points. First off, I agree that men need to come together in general. I believe in tribes nowadays. I agree with Rich that, you can't save the West, that you're actually building communities and tribes now. Why most of us have men's communities. And yes, it is a masculinity thing, because no matter how you see it, a lot of Muslims like to talk about the enemies of Islam and the enemies of the Muslims. But the simple fact of the matter is, when we look back at the times of the companions, their enemies were also very masculine men. You couldn't take that from them. Those guys were very masculine men. So masculinity is a universal, whether they agree with you or not. If a guy has actual masculine attributes across the board, maybe his ideological beliefs and whatnot are different, but masculinity tends to be universal. Now, going into something you were talking about, you made a very good point that Rollo, that I've been saying for a long time. And what we see amongst the Muslims a lot right now, and this is, I think, one of the biggest problems and one of the best attack vectors that they've come at the Muslims with, is that men are trying to become what they're attracted to, and women are trying to become what they're attracted to. So we find women are taking on masculine traits, going to university, getting high-paying jobs, becoming a big shot, boss girl, and then she's running some management firm or whatever else, so she's moved way up the corporate ladder. And obviously we know that women do not tend to marry down. They marry across or up, which makes it very difficult for her to find somebody. She has adopted and taken on very masculine traits in getting to where she is. And men, thinking that his masculine traits are a turnoff to a woman, starts to tone down his masculinity. And what happens in exchange? He becomes very effeminate and feminine in exchange. And I don't think a lot of men notice that they do this when they try and tone down their masculinity. Nobody's talking about going around smacking people, and these, caricatures that society actually puts out there, to insult and, berate and make masculinity look bad. Nobody's talking about those, overplayed, attributes, but just straight out masculine attributes they have belittled And men are afraid, especially Muslim men are afraid to take that on. Like we were saying, then they say you're a savage, you treat women bad, you know, you want to oppress them, this, that, the other, and whatever else. So, I mean, spot on there, Rolo. I mean, I agree 100% with that. You know, we're seeing the genders do sort of like a flip flop, where guys are trying to, you know, be soft and they think, hey, this is going to attract the girl. And it's nothing could be more from the opposite. When these guys are wondering, how does Abuamerican do it? He's a savage on YouTube and Twitter, and he's getting all these women chasing him. And he's in the comments chasing the women there to my comments. They're looking for me, you know, and these women are out here trying to become a bunch of guys, and guys are like, you know, I say it all the time. I said in the last show, no guys out there looking at this woman, this sister, like, ooh.
What happens when men trade their authority for this sort of certainty, or this idea that they can, if just all I have to do is give up my masculine authority and women will like me more because of it. The more I become feminine, what happens is you put women into, like I said, that umbrella situation, to the point where women become the intermediary between you and God at that point. And I make this case also in my fourth book, is that if mama ain't happy, God ain't happy. And we're getting to the point right now where if these guys aren't simping, they're not doing enough, that they're not living up to whatever expectations that woman has. And as Daniel was saying, women have very little need of men today, because we've pretty much ensured the beta bucks, provisioning, parental investment, protection side of things for so long that standard is very, very high. But if that guy doesn't measure up, then it's not, especially if you're a believer, and I don't care what religion it is, if you're a sincere, convicted believer and mama ain't happy, it means God ain't happy too. And so therefore, it's no longer about your relationship with your wife. It's about your relationship with your God, because it's coming down from on high through her to get to you. And I think that is one of the most insidious things that's going on as far as this assimilation of gynocentrism with old religion, is that it's replacing men's authority with women's authority as being sort of the arbiter between you and your God. And I think that's a very dangerous place to be.
I'll say this, if I can hop in here, because from the observer's position, whenever I get a weak Muslim guy calling into my show, he's not in an Arabic country. He's not calling me from Saudi Arabia, from any of those countries. He's not. He's calling me from Sweden. He's calling me from Germany, from the UK, from Canada, from the United States. That's where he's calling in from. And he's behaving just like every other simpy guy does, who thinks, become less so she can become more, raised in some cases by a single mother. There's no father around. So they're sitting around all day consuming, Western media that tells you to basically be a little beta bitch, right? I don't see too many guys calling in from conventionally Muslim worlds. Doesn't happen.
That's interesting,
because
because I have because I have the same percentage among my clients. The vast majority of them are Arabs, like Arab men, but they're living in United States, Canada, Australia, Sweden, like West Europe, I want to drop this, your umbrella. It is fascinating, Rolo. It just remind me of quote, which is hadith of Prophet Muhammad. I just lighted in my mind. It is in Arabic, لا تؤدي المرأة حق زوجها حق ربها حتى تؤدي حق زوجها, which is translated literally.
You're say.
Yeah. I'm translating it. The woman will never fulfill God's right until she fulfill the husband's right. Whatever she did, that's literally. It just remind me, like your umbrella remind me of this hadith.
Yeah, the umbrella is really amazing.
You notice that those themes, like that hierarchy is mutual amongst other society. You can go to the hunter gatherers in the Amazon rainforest. That hierarchy is still there. It's unique to human beings, I think. Go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that I really like the umbrella inversion of the hierarchy, and now men are even below children, and all we're supposed to be is
women will say that you're just like a little child. You're just another.
You should add some pits, Rolo.
Well, you can put the dog there, and then you can put the men below the dog.
Dogs. I forgot that part of the umbrella.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just the image that's been portrayed of what men are. Like, where can you find within popular culture in the West this this strong masculine figure who's also the head of the household, and he's the the in charge, basically. That image does not exist in mainstream media, in popular culture. The image of what a husband or a man is Homer Simpson, the guy who can't do anything. He's so stupid, he is constantly messing up, and who has to come and save the day? It's his wife or his brilliant daughter.
Even
But
from
the
himself.
guys are just these kinds of images have been pounded into our our consciousness in the West for decades. So what do you expect, like, with this hierarchy? No one thinks of, even the idea of a strong patriarch does not exist in the Western consciousness anymore.
Yeah.
It's what I call the pussification of the West, and it's been
Mhm.
going on for a long time. It's very slow. It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, by the way, Richard, did you got the book, The Death of the West, for Patrick Buchanan?
No, it's on my list of reads on my wish list on my Audible.
Rollo, you have to read this book, The Death of the West by Patrick Buchanan. He's the private consultant for 4 American president. And what he's saying is, like, we are falling and there is nothing that we can do to reverse it. And he bring all metrics and numbers.
The Fall of the West. Is that what you said it was called? What was the title?
The Death of the West.
By Patrick Buchanan. Rich, you say it all the time. Men love to complicate their lives, and
Justify what?
and we got guys out here like Mahdi, we got Coach Kareem, myself, and we're out here teaching guys, and we're trying to tell them, like, hey, don't make these mistakes. I'm the first to admit I made more mistakes than anybody else. That's why I've been married so many times and divorced so many times. I at least learned from it, and I got it on point now. But when you try and teach guys, they're resistant to this knowledge, and it's really problematic, and I think for Muslims and Islam, kind of wrapping things up here. I know, Rich, you have to go soon. Kind of wrapping things up here. I think we're in the early stages, and I think Muslims have the capability and capacity, obviously, to catch whatever, subversive tactics are being thrown at us. As you said, as Rollo said, the progress has been slow. And one thing that I'll give the credit to the Muslims, both male and female, is there's really no in-between line. They either totally go off the rails, and you find that these Muslims, like Amina Wadud, she's literally to the point that people are openly and willingly, making how do you translate takfir? What's the best way to make takfir?
Excommunicating
excommunicating, throwing them outside of the religion. It's a very dangerous thing to do, to throw one Muslim out of the religion. People are comfortable doing it. I mean, this is a dangerous thing to do in Islam. People are comfortable doing it to the point that it's like, you're over there and we're over here. And there's a few people, in the middle ground, but the Muslims have generally been resistant to it, because there comes a point where it's like, a person has to decide, are we going to take on gynocentric ideas, feminist ideas, or are we going to actually, stick to what is, as we know, Islam? And the problem starts when Muslims, they take on their culture, and they take that culture and act like it's Islam. And their culture is easily subverted because there's no religious text whatsoever to protect their culture. But Islam has Islamic texts that have a chain of narrators to where it's like, you can't alter that. There's interpretations, there's understandings, like the Quran. There's what's called tafsir, the explanation of the Quran. People want to re-explain the verses. We know you can't do that anymore, because you can get hit in the head by like absolute experts who did nothing but their whole life study this book and then put it in books by volumes. And so,
but we actually, one thing, sorry to interrupt you,
No, please.
My apologies, but just because Rollo mentioned praxology, like the idea, it's because it's not just texts, right? It's not just that the texts have been preserved. That's a huge part of it, obviously, within Islam. But in Islam, we also have this concept of sunnah, which I think Mahdi also mentioned and Coach Kareem also mentioned. The sunnah, which is practice, and it's based on imitation, and it's based on, actually, we have a model for how to live life. We have a model for how to organize our families. We have a model for how to be masculine. And that's the model of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And Muslims are supposed to imitate that. And okay, well, we don't have like videotape of the Prophet. We don't have like that kind of visual portrayal that we can imitate, but we do have what's known as like a chain of transmission. And people within Muslim societies, and especially Muslim scholars, are supposed to imitate and practice his way of life, down to things like how to trim your beard or shape your beard, how to facial hair, how to dress, how to, cleanse yourself with water, things of this nature, but higher order things like how to be with your wife, how to be with your children, how to interact within a family setting. That kind of example, most Muslims around the world aren't going to be experts on hadith or even the Quran, but they do have this model that has been passed down generation over generation down to the present day. And you see that's kind of the backbone that preserves practice, and that's praxology, because it doesn't require this kind of sophisticated theoretical model that exists within the Islamic sciences. But as far as the average day-to-day Muslim goes, it's based on, okay, we have this example that's been passed down, and that makes them much more resistant to these kinds of modernist ways of life. It's practice. It's actual praxology.
I've got to run, guys. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, Rich.
Most welcome. Take care.
Take care.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah,
Abuamerican.
Craig, unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm a pro at that. We're up on an hour and 24 minutes. Anyway, almost an hour and 30 minutes. I guess we should wrap this up anyway. Right. So, hey, Rollo, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks. Hey, I just want to show you. I still have this, by the way. This was like, I think you sent me this back in like 2019. And I am in no way a Quranic expert, but I do have a Quran. I have read it. Just in case you're wondering if I did for the book. Yes.
Nice.
But yeah, that's because of you. That was you, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Guys, we got to do this again. We got to do a panel, obviously, again. I don't know if we can have Roller on again, but definitely, we'd love to have you.
No problem.
Daniel, I'd love to hear more from you, man. I mean,
Sure.
bro, you're mighty quiet this show, bro. You're like the intellectual powerhouse, and you were just like chilling, bro.
No, I was just absorbing, taking everyone's great ideas. So I really enjoyed being here, part of the conversation. Thank you so much for hosting.
Yeah, thanks for coming, bro. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you very much, Abuamerican. Rollo, thank you for showing up.
Sure,
I would like to have you in my channel, like if in your free time, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll be happy to go on with any of you guys. Just let me know.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, and keep up the great work, Rollo. Like I said, your shorter videos were the gateway drug for me to get hooked onto your longer streams.
I'm glad. Good. I'm glad you could benefit.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. That's it. We will see you guys on the next live. It's your man, Abuamerican. I am out. Assalamu alaikum.